Good morning and welcome back to Spid YouTube. This is the Corp game of the first round of the ANZ League for this little season of the ANZ League. I'm still on the Kakurenbo stuff, and we'll be doing another Kakurenbo game, but it's been about a month since I last talked about Kakurenbo, and so I've changed a lot about the deck, and there's a lot I really want to discuss about the deck building and the play of it before we get into the game, because I've become a lot better at it, in my opinion, and I'm very happy with where the list is right now. And it still can improve, which is even greater. This is the original list by Nephrolite that I stole from, and there's the sort of two lists that Nephrolite has. Nephrolite has the list that they sent and then made, and then the list that Nephrolite sort of updated with. And while I've talked about this deck a bit in that video, I have changed quite a lot about it, which I will show by going to this deck, which is the deck that went 3-1 in APAC cons, and it was me who was piloting when it went 3-1 in APAC cons. This one definitely could have won this game, right? I know, like, most of the time you play a game, it's a game you could have won, right? Like, you could nearly win any game, but like it was on me for losing this game a fair bit. I just made some silly decisions against an opponent who played really well and ended up top cutting. But yeah, I write a lot about this deck in this thing, and that's because I'm a massive yapper, and you can probably tell from the fact that what I'm doing right now is making videos where I yap. But you don't have to read all of this. I think if you want to play this deck, it might be worth thinking about it, but you know, some of these opinions we'll sort of talk about in a sec. But this is the version of the deck that I'm running. First off, you can see the agenda suite is only 5/3s, and I prefer send a message to Fuji. My logic here is that the version that this is, it has an enemy, it has Saisentan, so that's why it's on Fuji, right? Because if you want to put an enemy in front of a or an enemy Saisentan like Fuji in like a server, that could be like a kill combo. As Nephrolite says, it sort of changes later on, where they take out all the 2-pointers and put in send a message. But I just think send a message is just like a better thing. Like if they hit a, I'd rather they hit a send a message and I get to res my pretty expensive ice, my Boto, my Vampire Runasa, even my Cloud Eater, even though like it doesn't get the encounter effect, it's still big. For free. I would much rather that if they're going to steal anything, which they don't, you know, they're going to steal like one agenda max some games. And like the other bit doesn't really matter much at all, unless I score it with like with the cards we'll talk about in a second. They end up changing to Charlotte. I think I strongly disagree with this. I think Cohort is just an incredibly good card that feels a lot better to use because it makes what you want to do on your clicks make a lot more sense, right? Most of the time, most turns are going to be draw a card, install 2 cards, or draw a card, install a card, play an operation. And I would much rather do that than advance a card, do that just so that Charlotte can, in theory, draw me a card, but if it gets trashed, then that next turn feels way more awkward than what Cohort asks of you. Especially because the way I end up building the deck, there's a lot of cards I'm very comfortable trashing, including, like, importantly, the Petty Cash, right? You don't want to play the Petty Cash. I think what I've come to learn is that if you play Petty Cash, you're actively, like, kind of really sad. Because all Petty Cash says is +2 credits, and when you're doing the combo, the fact that the combo gains you 2 credits / it is free doesn't feel great. If this is the first time you're seeing this, by the way, I guess I should explain the combo really quickly. If you res a Plutus, which is a card that lets you trash 3 cards, it lets you do 2 things. It lets you trash 3 cards, which is very nice, and it lets you play a transaction operation from archives. That transaction operation is allowed to be petty cash, that gives you 4 clicks, such that Kakurenbo, which allows you to get a card from archives and install it and place 2 advancement counters on it for the cost of 3 clicks. You can do that on a Regenesis that you would have trashed from the Plutus, and then the Regenesis adding your 4th click to advance it the 3rd time lets you score a 5/3 that you also trashed when you did the Plutus. If you're thinking this doesn't make sense with some rules that you might be familiar with, Plutus does it at the end of their turn, which means that Regenesis doesn't have the issue of if no Corp cards have been added to archives this turn. It does mean that on that turn you won't be cohorting because that'll add a card to archives, but that is like the main issue that someone might have when looking at this list of how that sort of works. But the point is that, like, yes, you will be petty caching and you will get the $2 when it does happen in archives, but that's not like, once you're doing that, that's such a meaningless thing to think about, and you're not playing this from archives that often. You have 3 petty cash and you only need to do the combo twice, so one time you will be petty caching because you'd want to, or you get to do the Plutus last an extra turn and you get to just petty cash for the credits without needing to do the combo bit of it. But because this only gets you 2 credits, this is like the perfect Hansei review or cohort target. That's one of many good cohort targets, and there are other cohort targets that we'll get to when we talk about the final version of the list. They say this sentence: Cloud Eater and Conjure are thoroughly better off as real ice, and an enemy can be cut now that Deep Dive is rotated. So now they're on Fly Swatter, Boto, and Empiricist. I also accept the Empiricist and the Boto. And I take out the enemy. I fully agree. You don't need to be a kill deck with this. But I keep the Conjure and Cloud Eater. This has changed in my modern version, because if you'll notice down somewhere, I also say that I don't like the Conjure and the Cloud Eater, right? Like, I just didn't use it in like the tournament that was like the biggest tournament. Like, if I'm not using it in like the tournament that I want it, and I'm just trashing it with cohort, it may well be something that could at least have been rezzed if I wanted it to be rezzed. So I also end up taking this out, as we'll get to in the final list, which is over here. But I want to talk about this just a tiny bit more, because I use my influence on the Hollow Man. If you look at this, the influence is spent on RLC and Gaslight, and there are 3 Plutuses. One of the big changes I made is to go down to 2 Plutuses. I think you don't need 3 Plutuses. I think often you will have 2 Plutuses in hand and be thinking, well, if I want to do the combo twice, I'll need both of my Plutuses, because importantly, it's the res effect that's quite important from Plutus as well. That lets you score this stuff from hand, rather than just having both of the stuff in archives naturally, which it can be, but that's way riskier than just having them in hand. You're gonna trash the other Plutus? If you're gonna trash the other Plutus most of the time anyway, why not have a different card? Especially a card that you like to put influence in. At the time, I chose Hollow Man. Hollow Man, you know, both of us talk about like how it's really easy to do the combo. The combo happens most games. It's getting the last 3 points that's a bit tough. Hollow Man was a really good way of fixing that problem, right? It allows you to just have the 5, like everyone, if you played with Hollow Man, you get how this works, right? If the Hollow Man and the 5/3 are installed, the next turn, no matter where the Hollow Man is, because you can always move it, for pretty cheap, you can just get the Hollow Man to score that out for you, right? You know, it costs 2 to res and then 4 to advance, so it's still 6. But for 8 credits, you can score the 5/3, and that's the game-winning 5/3, and you will often have a lot of money with this deck. So, yeah, I chose the Hollow Man. I also decided to add an Anoetic. I don't know if Nephrolite was on Anoetic. I don't want to say that was me if Nephrolite did that. Yeah, I like the Anoetic a lot. I think initially it seems a bit awkward because of cards like Plutus, but Anoetic plus Plutus does work because you can still trash the 2 cards you want. And like if you have 5 cards in hand, then you can still like typically, you know, look, actually what I just said was completely wrong. The good bit really is just that you can have Spin Doctor, right? So you can still Spin Doctor the cards you lost that were going to be the cards you needed to trash in order to make Plutus res, and still have cards you can then Kakurenbo, or like the Kakurenbo still works. The fact that you can Spin Doctor means you can get those cards back really, really easy, right? On just like another server. Lets you get to 7 cards. In addition, Anoetic lets you score the 5/3s really well, even without a Hollow Man. Like, if an Anoetic's in a server, you can install advance a 5/3. If there's like 2 pieces of ice, and we're like sort of in the late game, most runners can't get through that. They can't get through like that server 3 times if there's a Boto plus a Saisentan there, or a Boto plus a Boto, or Boto plus a Vampy Runasa, right? They just can't get themselves to get through it, and that's the other thing. Like, Anoetic is loosely almost forming a Hollow Man relationship. It's just slightly, it's a bit more taxing on you, because you need to make sure you've got all the cards in hand as well as the ability to pay the credits, which can be tough, and you're spending like 3 clicks on the turn of installing rather than having the Hollow Man already set up. But it's worth, I think Anoetic is a really good card for the slot that it fits in. There's a couple other changes I made. I like having a single hedge fund. I think that works out well, and I don't think I made any ice changes at this point. This is what I brought to APAC cons. This has been the version I've been working on recently, and there's a couple of history stuff that I can go through here. Importantly, the main 2 things I wanted to do when updating this deck was to actually see if Hollow Man was the best use of influence, especially 2 Hollow Men, and to see if what the ice should be. Because frankly, Conjun and Cloud Eater suck. And it's very fun, and I'm glad I had it when I was trying the deck, but they're not the best version. My first thought was to look at what I should spend influence on, and my eyes immediately went to Pivot and Corporate Hospitality. If you look at Nephrolite's old version, it was on a card called Gaslight. Gaslight lets you add an operation to your hand, and that can be Kakurenbo. But if you already have the Kakurenbo, you don't need to add a Kakurenbo. You already have it. You'd want something that I think seeking draw or tutoring is a good idea, but I don't like the way Gaslight does it. I think Gaslight, it feels strange because it's an asset, so you have to install it, it can be interacted with, and even then, you're just getting one card. It doesn't feel particularly good. So I decided that what I wanted to try were two cards. The cards I was interested in were Corporate Hospitality and Pivot. And I just wanted to try them, right? I didn't know which one I would like more or whatever. As you can see, I finally decided on Corporate, but Corporate Hospitality. For 2 clicks, gain $6 and draw 2 cards, add a card from Archives to HQ. This is really good. I think it's interesting the way I've been playing this, and you'll see it in the game, I think. Generally speaking, your hand will basically always be at 5 cards when playing with this deck, because your turns will basically always be draw a card, install, install. And so when you're playing Corporate, it'll put you to like 7 cards, and then you only get to play one of them, so you're discarding a card. So most of the time, Corporate doesn't get played, because you'll be overdrawing, and that feels bad when you're naturally trashing things with Cohort anyway. You don't want to be trashing something without getting the benefit from Cohort, which Cohort will be around for most of your turns if you're putting big ice in front of it. So, when do you play this card? You play this card in a couple of instances. One, you play this card if you're fighting Anarch and they have trashed ice. Instead of drawing install, you'll probably installing, which means you'll be on low cards, which means next turn you want a Corporate Hospitality and get that extra card draw back. Adding a card from Archives to HQ is also really nice if you have a Spin Doctor. So even if you have 5 cards, you can Corporate Hospitality, it puts you to the 8. You can play the Spin Doctor, and then you shuffle, you don't take you to 8, it takes you to 7. You play the Spin Doctor, you don't res it, you trash cards, and then you're able to Spin Doctor things back in. Importantly, if a Spin Doctor is in Archives, you get to take it back, and that often means that you're not forced to use Spin Doctors early, and you can let the runner trash them, and they will want to trash them. The enemy gamer will want to trash those Spin Doctors if you let them. And so Corporate Hospitality is like the only non-Spin Doctor recursion I have in this deck. Unlike the way that Nephrolite built this with the moon pools, which I definitely don't like. I think they are too expensive, and you don't have enough agendas in the deck to justify a moon pool, and Corporate Hospitality is better than a moon pool for the benefits of this deck. Especially because you also still have alt scoring in Hollow Man, and I mean, even the Cohort, right? Cohort has alt scored me on occasion. And Anoetic. Anoetic is an alt score because it just gets them out of Archives. You can lock them out. Sorry, I get very distracted. I'm a little bit scatterbrained. Corporate Hospitality lets you do a Spin Doctor thing. This is really nice. There's one more benefit of Corporate Hospitality, which is that it is actually a transaction operation, which means often I have found 80% of my opponents, let's say, don't trash the Plutus the turn after I combo. Which means you get to Corporate Hospitality from Archives, and that feels amazing to be able to Corporate Hospitality and then have 2 clicks left afterwards to do stuff with it. It feels phenomenal. I really like this card. I think this will be a permanent addition to the deck, as I was messing around with things. The logic for Pivot was pretty similar. Pivot lets you find... I know my head's covering it a little bit, but Pivot lets you find your Kakurenbo or your agenda. I found the agenda to be a bit tougher to find, and so like I would often use it to get my Regenesis, right? I would just use it to get Regenesis. And threat 3, if they steal a single agenda, I was going to say 99% of the time, that's just like fundamentally a lie. If they steal an agenda 62.5% of the time, it's a 3-pointer. And so threat is activated. And if threat is activated, it means you can install a Plutus, you can install a Cohort. Often I end up just installing like a Spin Doctor or an Ice. But the fact that you can do that means it also just ends up being quite click efficient. And with both of these cards, they have a trash cost. And especially with Pivot, it was actually like, I was very happy to see them lose $3 to a Pivot. Like, Pivot's not like critical to my game plan, it's just like nice to have. So I was testing these, and I know Hollow Man is going to be in the final version of the deck, but I wanted to test cards. When you want to test cards, you make the deck worse in order to make sure you see more copies of the cards you want to test. After what I did this on the 18th, after like 3 weeks, I've decided that pivot is just not it, and I'd rather, like, if I'm gonna play with the final version a little bit more, Hollow Man is what I want. This means I have 1 influence left. I have no idea what to spend 1 influence on. Back to Nephrolite. Nephrolite uses it on Gaslight. Maybe I'll go Gaslight. But I wanted to try Boomy. I wanted to try another piece of ice. One thing that I have changed is that I hate Fly Swatter. You'll hear this a lot about my thoughts on ice. We'll go into ice in a second. But I hate Fly Swatter. And Boomy almost hits the Fly Swatter purpose of, if I'm seeing Physaurums or Botuluses, Boomy is just as good. But Boomy is going to be a card that I trash. I think there's only 2 more things that I really want to talk about with this deck. One is my cohort logic. I basically, having played, 50, 60, 100 games of this deck? I don't know how many I've played. It's probably less than 100, but above 50. Cohort, I sort of know exactly what cards I'm trashing with Cohort every time, and I sort of have a plan for which cards I want to trash with Cohort. Number 1 is Petty Cash, because you don't want to play Petty Cash. This is like an active, this is like a Slay the Spire curse. You don't want this card in your hand. Then it's typically forms of ice, and it's the first ice you want to get rid of is Fly Swatter, then Boomy, then Sisentan. Sisentan is only here, and I'm very close to getting rid of Sisentan. Sorry, it's definitely not Fly Swatter. It's Tattoo, then Fly Swatter, then Boomy, then Sisentan. Sisentan's only here because there are instances where on turn 1, the ideal play is either draw, install 2 ice in front of both R&D and HQ, or it's Hansei Review, install. And Sisentan is good because it means that if you don't have money, you can still do the Sisentan. And if they decide to like do what I did with the Phoenix and just run in, Sisentan's a great ice to erase when they don't have icebreakers. But if they have icebreakers, Sisentan just like isn't that good. And since I am mostly trying to highlight Empiricist. I'm mostly a big ice deck. Sisentan feels like a liability where it actually doesn't have that much strength. So it's not going for the same win con as the rest of my ice. But Sisentan's often getting trashed. And then after that, it's like the second Vampire Ranasa I'm trashing, or the third Empiricist, or the Hedge Fund, or an Anoetic / Adrian. Now, I have gone to a second Adrian. This is new. I was only on 1 Adrian. You can see it's new because it says it up here. I think Adrian is really good. And ever since I've added the second Adrian, I felt really happy about it. Ever since, I did it yesterday, and I played 2 games. But yeah, it felt good. I think if I was to say what the best version of the deck is, I think it's this. I think the only things I could be convinced of for changing would be the Ice Suite at this point. Maybe the 1 Hedge Fund could change, but I think the Ice Suite is the only thing I'm uncertain about. I wouldn't be surprised if the best version is minus a Fly Swatter, minus a Tattoo, plus a Vampy, and then plus a... And this has been the issue. Every time I try and think of what ice to add, I look at the ice and I get sad. Plus a Palisade? Possibly. I mean, Palisade's just a worse tattoo. No, not Palisade. Plus a... I mean, this isn't a deck building thing. I don't like Fly Swatter. Now, here's my reason. The way the way this deck ends up playing is that you have like a ton of money. You will have like 10 to 20 bucks most of the time in this game as you're playing it. And so if I like, you only will have like 7 or 8 ice because you're going to be trashing a little bit of it and you're not going to draw it all. Like, I'm thinking like at around turn 6 or 7, which is when this stuff really matters, with like where your ice, like which location your ice is. The weak spot is going to be wherever the Fly Swatter is. And do you know what there to be a weak spot? Why should there be a weak spot when you've got enough money to afford all the ice? That's my main issue with Fly Swatter. Where early on, yes, it can protect a cohort, but I don't play in the way that I need to protect a cohort on turn 1. And if I'm protecting a cohort on turn 2, I very hopefully have played a Hansei Review or a Hedge Fund, and I'm sort of mulliganing for that, right? In a sense, my mulligans are very intuitive to me. I don't know if I have like a universal rule for it. One of the things I was thinking of doing, if I really wanted to, was to go to there's a thing. I don't know where the thing is, but there's a thing that lets you like draw this thing. Like I click 5 and I say, would I keep this hand? No, I would not keep this hand. It's actually not a bad hand. This is like a close hand. I think like you could obviously just play petty cash. Kind of sucks, but at least you have the 7 credits to afford Empiricist. Empiricist Tattoo, and then next turn you're drawing and seeing what you get. Like what if you get one more? Cool, beautiful. If this is what you see on your first 6 cards, then this is actually probably a keeper. You don't know you have the cohort. I'm a little bit scatterbrained. I realized that I just did that for no reason. Or I intended not to do it, and then I did it. Nonetheless, I've talked for about 20 minutes for the deck, but I've got a lot of thoughts on this deck, and I really do quite like how it has come about. I think I kind of hope Nephrolite sees this, because I have carried on your legacy by continuing playing this deck. I don't know if Nephrolite has continued playing it, but I quite like the way it's at now. Atini, I don't know how to feel about. Atini is another experimental thing. I added Atini recently. Yeah, I originally was on Microweb, and then I just like never did any of the subroutines because it was just not happening. Even though I think Microweb's actually like not a bad choice. If you can consistently get the Microweb things off, I think it's probably fine. But I was trying Atini. I don't think it's great. In fact, if I want to update this, the first choice might actually be Atini into Vampire on Arsa. If there was just one more big ice that wasn't Cloud Eater, because Cloud Eater is not that good, I'd just get rid of the Atini, the Fly Swatter, and one of the Tattoo Bowlers and run 3 of that big ice, and then that'd be great. But unfortunately, no. What is this? Distracted again. And that's all I wanted to say. The version that we'll be using for this game is not this version. It will be this version here, like with the extra pivot and the Corpo and the Fly Swatter, and without the Boomy, Hollow Man, and Adrian. It's worth knowing that there's no Hollow Man, right? So if you're not playing on a Hollow Man version, it does mean that you're either doing the Plutus combo twice, you're doing a Regenesis just off the rip, or you're scoring a 5-3 off the rip, right? That's fine. You can do that. That's very easy to do. You'll often get into situations where you have 2 ice in front of something and either an Adrian or an Anoetic, and you can just score the 5-3. And so that also feels fine. Like that's not scary. I think like initially I was really scared to do that, but your ice is so expensive that they will be locked out. And if you're just spin doctor cycling your agendas, they won't win before they're locked out. And that feels great. Congratulations, you've won the game. My enemy gamer is playing Sable. Now, I have fought enough Crim and enough Anarch and enough Shaper with this deck to know like how I want to play into an enemy gamer like Sable. Luckily, a lot of the time, my first play is still ideally install, and then like a hedge fund or something. I'm looking at this hand and thinking, can I do some of my ideal choices? And the answer is no. I've only got 1 ice, so I can only defend 1 of these servers. And I have this is a more, I need this agenda more than I need the other agendas, right? This, like, if they take 2 of these, then I'm forced into not doing the Kakurenbo stuff. Not necessarily. You can Kakurenbo, but it's not like the combo bit. And I don't know. I don't have the ice to protect the cohort, so I'm pretty sure I mulligan this. I keep this. What? So, okay, if you like look at the, like, I don't know, if you look at like all hands, right? All hands like exist on some sort of line. The hand is definitely above 50%, right? I won't deny that this is an above 50% hand. So maybe that's like literally just a reason to keep it, right? If it's above 50%, it's a reason to keep it. I talk about this a lot when I was doing LOR VOD reviews. Just keeping all hands that are above 50% or not keeping hands that are below 50% isn't the best way to think about it. You've got to think about it like in terms of the matchup, right? Is an above 50% hand, in terms of just your hand value, worth it in comparison to the enemy gamer, like what they're doing, right? Because maybe if you're favored or you need like a specifically good hand, instead of being a straight line, you should view it more of an arc of some sort, like a bridge. I'm surprised I kept this. I actually think that this is probably wrong. I should, with a spin doctor, any hand with a spin doctor can't be that bad, right? Any hand with an ice and a cohort can't be that bad. Any hand with a hedge fund can't be that bad. That's probably what I was thinking at the time. But I think I would have preferred to mulligan. Obviously, the issue with mulliganing, especially in a game like this, is that it's not really a straight line in goodness, which is that like the stuff over here is like, it's really bad. It's like game losing to go over here. While in other games, getting something like this isn't necessarily game losing. But if I draw 5 agendas, I've lost the game, right? And, you know, sometimes you take that risk anyway because that's so unlikely. But if your hand is like pretty flatly fine, you can probably keep it. But I'm surprised I kept this. I actually think I should have mulliganed it. Nonetheless, we keep it and we drew a Hansai review. This is so good to see. But because we don't have a double ice, if I have double ice, I'm always double icing, right? I'm never not double icing if I've got double ice. Even if I can't afford the ice, I just still double ice because they don't know that I can't afford the ice. They think I'm on Tattoo Bowler, which I am, but I don't want to play it, so I'll probably be taking it out soon. I would always double ice. And then there's obviously the argument that they have transfer of wealth, so you have to ice HQ. Funnily enough, I don't ice HQ on the first turn, and I still don't think that was the right choice, but I do it anyway. I don't remember what everything I do on this turn is. I click to draw. Yeah, I think I really wanted an ice. I'll repeat this. I really like double icing as the first turn, like quite a lot. And because I don't draw an ice, now I'm in a position where I can only defend one of these servers, and they have clean getaway and transfer of wealth. Like that, you just have to assume they have that in their first turn. And I decide, well, I've got 5 cards. Only one of them is an agenda. And I don't actually mind that much if they choose to trash these, because my hand is so flatly good that if they trash one of like my 3 cards that they can trash, I'm not too worried about it. What I would hate is if they found a 5/3 here. So what I decide to do is hedge fund, so I can actually afford the Atini, and then put a Teeny here. This is unorthodox. This is a rare instance. You're not seeing a normal start for me. My normal starts are very much ice, ice, Hansai review, and then draw, ice, install cohort, right? If that's what I basically mulligan for every game. I don't Hansai review, sorry, there's no reason to well, there is a reason to, because this would activate. But these cards are too good. And part of it is also I wanted 5 cards. So I don't Hansai review, sorry, I do hedge fund. Part of the reason to not ice HQ is that I have 5 cards. And if I use a Hansai review, then I only have 4 cards, and that would be a lot worse. Plus, these cards they weren't in the list of the cards I want to trash, especially since I'm using a Teeny to do stuff. Right, so that makes sense that I had hedge fund, and that's one of the purposes of hedge fund, right? Someone might see this and be like, "Man, you're so lucky you didn't get transfer of wealth." I kind of agree, but it's not that it wouldn't have been as bad as many other instances of transfer of wealth because we still have the Hansai review, and they still have to clear the tag. And if they're doing their whole turn running then clearing tag, I'm not as worried about it. And especially if they run clear tag then run this. That's not that bad. I don't know. I don't mind that, even if they have those. But they do take the Regenesis. I did get 1 in 5, and Regenesis is the worst thing they can take for us. I know it doesn't win them the game as hard, but it's much harder for me to win if I lose my Regenesis, because Regenesis is like my it's my main scoring thing. You can score 5/3s, but that's after turn 10, after turn 15. You're scoring the 5/3s typically. You can score them early. Obviously, the game can be contingent, but that's like the general mindset you should have when playing. Okay, so they take the 5/3, and I'm really sad. They install Calm in an open market. I did draw an ice, but at this point, there's no reason not to play the Spin Doctor. I just want to draw cards and see what I get. Yep, I broke it again. Let me... I don't Spin Doctor. Sorry. This is not what I thought would happen at all. I am not playing as I would instinctively play. Okay, first off, I drew at the last click. That's never right. Now, I don't think I have a reason to... I don't think there's ever a card that would change my play, right? Like, I know the reason you don't draw a last click is because there might be a card that changed your play. I know my deck enough that there wasn't going to be a charge that changed my play. A card that changed my play. But, sorry, can I not Control Z to just get rid of this? There we go. I'm surprised. I'm surprised at that. I really should have Spin Doctored. I do trash Spin Doctor because these cards are all better than Spin Doctor. That's kind of a humorous statement to make, because obviously one of them is a Spin Doctor. But because I can Spin Doctor the Spin Doctor, and I drew them both early on, I don't mind putting the Spin Doctor in there for now. But I'm surprised at my decisions. I think it's reasonable to want to ice and do the money, but I just would have done that with the Spin Doctor, rather than clicking to draw as well. So that's a misplay. I've misplayed in this game. Twice, possibly. And if I'm including the mulligan, possibly 3 times. Actually, the first one I don't think was a misplay. But like, if you're thinking like mulligan, turn 1, turn 2, I think I've already disagreed with both of these. which is why you VOD review. Because when playing it, I think I felt fine with all my decisions. I don't know why this is breaking. This has never broken before. Okay, so they click 1, draw a card. Click 2, install Boomerang. Click 3, copy DM. I will always raise this ice. There's no reason to. They're going to be running that server a lot, so I may as well get the tax started as soon as possible. Damn, this is breaking a surprising amount of times. I wonder if I'm doing something wrong. They get in. And they don't see anything. So we move on. We draw a petty cash. I clicked a petty cash. I know I said I don't normally like to, but I think it's okay to have done so there, I think. I deeply apologize. This isn't working. I've never had it not... It's not like my spacebar key is broken, right? Because it's still stopping. I don't agree with this turn either. Who is this person playing this game? It's not me. I think I would have put the Boto here to like make sure that I'm still getting my $1 every turn. I know I've got this coming up, right? So like this next turn, this won't be here and this will be here. Maybe this is fine, right? The fact that like, even if they run this and prevent me from getting my buck, I'm getting my buck every turn from here on out. Because next turn I know I'm doing Spin Doctor. But it's just a little strange. I'm just playing strangely. But I also had like a unorthodox mulligan for how I normally play the deck. They clean Getaway, I don't mind. They Pinhole Thread, which means I get to Spin Doctor. I choose to... This is a misplay. I choose to add back Kansai Review. I think I should have gotten back Corporate Hospitality. Now, Corporate Hospitality's best use is post-Plutus. So, like, you kind of want it in Archives, but that's so far away. And having a Corpo Hospitality in hand would have felt... Or in the deck so that it could go in hand, I think would have felt nicer. Then a Hansai Review. Since I've already played a Hansai Review, and there's still 2 more in deck, I'm comfy with my money. Like, I'm not worried about my money anymore here on out. So, I don't know. I think I should have put the Corpo Hospo in. Actually, I'm going to disagree with myself there. This version of the deck's on 2 Corporate Hospos. So I think I actually am fine, because I already still have a Corporate Hospo in there, which means I have the other one for Plutus in the Archives. I actually think I did the right play. I'm just thinking about my new deck rather than this version of the deck. Damn, I'm very flip-floppy. I clicked to draw, because you always click to draw, and then I installed. I suppose I should write, like, this is Vampy Ranasa, and this is Boto. They see Cohort, and they can't trash it, because they just don't have the money. I res Cohort, I trash a Empiricist, because it's the easiest thing to trash, and because I was running out of cards from earlier decisions, I do have to draw. And then I've got this hand. This is a hand you can have. This hand appears sometimes. It's not a great hand. You don't love to see this hand. It's sort of tough to work out what to do here. Because there's no way you want to install any of this stuff. Clicking for credit is probably the safe play, but I think clicking for credit acts as a Sibboleth that my hand is awkward, right? And I don't like that. I don't like having that Sibboleth. So I very much think I should draw here just so they don't think that I'm flooded. Right now, you might think, well, why would you ever draw to 6 cards? But I mean, it's fine too, right? The hand isn't as bad as it looks if you draw compared to how bad as it looks. They would think it's how it looks right now if I click for credit. If I click to draw, they might think I only have 2 agendas or 1 agenda in hand. And I just like have no ice or something, or no operations or something. Which is true, I don't have any ice operations, but that's a weaker thing than having specifically agendas. That's the way I see it, at least. Maybe that's like disagreeable, but that's how I viewed it. So I click to draw here. And then I just get rid of the card that I drew because I don't like Fly Swatter. And Cohort will probably be getting rid of the 5/3. One of the 5/3s. But I can always do that on the next turn rather than this turn, so that if they run Archives, it's not as bad. They basically install stuff. I haven't been talking about what they're doing a lot because it's not that it doesn't matter. It does matter. But as long as As long as it's just icebreakers and drawing and getting money, I can't interact with that. And as long as it's not like a Physarum I need to think about, or a Botulus, or a way they're getting into this somehow, I'm not as worried. So I do trust the 5-3 here. These cards are more important than 5-3s to me, in my mind. And if they do see this 5-3, like they actually choose to run it, I'm okay with it. It's not great. I would have preferred to trash one of those pieces of ice I don't like. But, like, I think what I really was needing was ice. I was actually lacking ice. I know I trashed an Empiricist earlier and Fly Swatter, but Fly Swatter is not going to prevent them from getting it. What I really wanted to do was be able to put a piece of ice here, put a Plutus and an Anoetic, and find my Kakurenbo, or even just put an Anoetic and like a Regenesis here, right? And I just really wanted to find that ice. We do draw a pivot, which means we can find Kakurenbo. So if I find ice, I can put ice here, Plutus here, and then get that Kakurenbo. But I need to find that Kakurenbo. Now, I'm looking at pivot, and I'm realizing they're not at 3 points, so I can't do something cool. And we find ice. Yes, we found ice. So that means we get to do Vampire and Arsa plus a thing here. Now, you can be greedy and try a Regenesis, or you can put the Plutus here and acknowledge that next turn you're pivoting, and you get to pog out. And with pivot, it also lets you play the Hantei Review, because you spend 2 clicks on the pivot and 1 click on the Hantei Review. So that's what I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is like the ideal circumstance. This is exactly what I want. This is a Vampire and Arsa, and this is a Plutus. They actually decide to run Archives. I was a little bit surprised that they would choose to do so, but they did. I res my Vampire and Arsa. It does put me below being able to res other stuff, but that's okay by me, because I'm asking them to be taxed. And they get the sender message, so I choose to res the Boto. This is something that I think is debatable, but I'd rather them run through this for free and trash my Plutus than, well, possibly win, or get rid of my other Regenesis, which might... It's not worse. Like, it's literally not worse, but it's, like, nearly just as bad. So if they run and get Plutus, that's fine. I'm sort of sad about it, but that's fine. And I'll live. From memory, they don't do that. I think they just draw. Yep. Okay. So I can trash a Hantei Review. I choose Hantei Review. This one, we're starting to get to an awkward spot where money does matter just a little bit. And so maybe I should have trashed the Anoetic Void. But I'm not too worried about money, and they don't know that this is too expensive, right? They think this could easily just be a Tattoo Bowler, right? So I pivot for a Kakurenbo. For what it's worth, I did probably misplay. I was probably supposed to trash the Anoetic and play the Hantei Review after this. Sorry. Yeah, it broke again. So I pivot, look for Kakurenbo. Oh, I draw first. Interesting. I suppose that's fine. Like, you're not overdrawing. And I get to install. Sorry, that's part of it. I realize why I didn't do it. I get to install the Anoetic. I completely forgot that was part of it. I forgot that we got to threat. Right? That I remembered when I was rewatching this. I was like, make sure you remember that this is really cool because pivot's active. Yeah, because pivot's active, you get to you can choose to draw. And you get to trash a card. Now that I've got ice everywhere, I'm not as interested in my Empiricist. And so I trash the Empiricist. And because this is an Anoetic, they... Look, it's awkward. Because if they do run this, sure, I get to Anoetic, bounce them. They can just run it again if they want. But even if I do Anoetic bounce, I lose these 3. And then when Plutus reses, I have to lose 3 more cards. So I don't actually get to do the combo. But they don't know that, right? They get in, they trash a Spin Doctor, that's kind of sad. But we get to do the combo. So Plutus gets rezzed, you trash 3 cards, you use Plutus to get your Petty Cash, which gets you an extra click, you play Kakurenbo, you install it, you advance it, and you do that. Obviously that was 4 times speed, so it was probably a little quick. But yeah, it works and it's cool. Let me just make it so that this is this. And also make sure that, this is an Anoetic Void. I don't know how useful writing this stuff is. But cool, we got to do the combo. I have to fix it up, irritatingly. This is the first time Vodon's had this. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but this kind of saddens me because I actually really like this program, absent of now apparently this bug. They install a Chesney. They draw. And they choose to run the Atini again. They've consistently tried to go into R&D. Now, obviously, R&D can just fail at some point. R&D is possible to fail. We know where 3 of the 3... Excuse me. Sorry. I have to... I don't remember what the button is for the circle shape, but I know I don't want the button for the circle shape. This can fail, right? We know where 3 of the 5-3s are, which means there are 2 in here. That's not that likely. It's, you know... It's somewhat likely. It's 1 in 9, but it's not that likely. So I'm not too worried about it, but it is a lethal possibility. Now we actually, this is again what I was saying, where Plutus wasn't killed, and so this is the perfect time to corporate hospitality, right? You get to refill your hand. I get to add Spin Doctor back to my hand, or pivot. But, or like Plutus, right? I'm going to pick Spin Doctor, I think, because I want to put the Plutus and the pivot back in if I want to do the combo again. Or at least threaten to do that. But most importantly is the corporate hospitality, right? Because it lets me draw cards and make decisions based on what I draw. Sorry, stop getting rid of that. So we corporate hospitality. We get a Fuji and a Hansai review. So I choose to go for the Spin Doctor. Thinking that, like, if I want to get the Plutus or the Kakurenbo, or I need to continually cycle my agendas, I will do it that way. And we still have 2 clicks. I think the ideal play is probably the Hansai review and the Spin Doctor. Get back money, like you still need money, and put a Spin Doctor in, such that for next turn we can do another corporate hospitality, possibly even using the Plutus to get another Hansai review. But if they're not going to go into this, the Plutus can just give us a Hansai review, so it's not that important to play this Hansai review. Depends if they have the Plutus, right? Or if they decide to go for the Plutus. On this turn, I decide to... I think Spin Doctor is a good choice here. I think you would want to Spin Doctor. I'm looking for like where my other combo pieces are. But I go Spin Doctor, and I protect R&D. And I think that's somewhat reasonable, because there's only 1 left in R&D. They don't know that there's only 1 left in R&D, but there's only 1 left in R&D. And this is not taxing them enough, very clearly. So I want to increase the tax. And it will either disincentivize them from going into that, which is good, because I have more manipulation over my hand, because they're not multi-accessing, and I can draw. Or overdraw and then put things in archives and then cycle it back, or all the way around. Every time they waste time going into archives, I feel happy, by the way. This feels lovely to me, that they're wasting this time and spending all their credits. They try to install an Icebreaker, but they don't have the memory chips, and so they take that back slightly. They end up going for the Spinny. I want to res it, so I do. But they I don't mind if they trash it, because I have the corporate hospitality again. So I'm okay if they trash that, and then I corporate hospitality it back. And they decide not to trash it, because they're also worried about money. Because their money is so low, I know they're more likely not to trash it as well. Yeah. At this point, I'm sort of thinking what my goal is, right? Because I can be a little bit orthogonal, but if I want to be orthogonal, I need to choose to get my Plutus back. What I mean by orthogonal is that, like, again, you only have 3 ways of actually scoring. You just score a 5-3, you use the Regenesis, or you do, like, the Kakurenbo combo. If I want to give myself this capacity, I do need to use the Spin Doctor to get myself Plutus, and then I also need to find the Kakurenbo. But I haven't drawn it at this point. We're starting to get into, like, will you deck out worries? So I'm thinking about either of these. Regenesis can be really risky because they've shown they love running into archives. And look, while we have a Spin Doctor here, there are worlds in which they either just run this server or run this server, and then we no longer get to do the combo. So in my mind, the 5-3 I should be really thinking about. And if I want the 5-3, we already have the Anoetic Void. We can just put an ice here and put the 5-3 here. And then as long as we can res both pieces of ice and we have Anoetic numbers and we're certain they're not gonna go for it and we're able to protect our HQ with like Spin Doctors and stuff, I think it's the right play. I think we could easily go for that. So that's where my mind is at, and that's where the mindset should be at. I choose to play hedge fund, partly because I know I'm going to overdraw a lot. I'm thinking about, do I want to shuffle things in before I corporate hospitality, or do I just want to play corporate hospitality? I decide to just play it and add myself the... I'm thinking about adding myself the pivot back. And then I decide to add the Plutus back. Because obviously if I add the Plutus back, I don't have to use Spin Doctor. Sorry, I kept saying I need to use Spin Doctor. I can use Spin Doctor or Plutus, or the thing I chose. I use that to add the Plutus back. So if I draw a Kakurenbo, I get a Kakurenbo combo. I can just install the Plutus here. But I also need to draw the Regenesis. And now we're starting to get into, like, in here, there's a Regenesis, which doesn't win them the games. That's why I haven't mentioned it. But yeah, there is the Regenesis in there. Or, we score the 5-3. I don't remember what I installed there. I think it was... Is that a third Spin Doctor? I'm pretty sure this is a third Spin Doctor. I'm, like, fairly certain that's a third Spin Doctor. They run that server. They let all the subroutines fire, so I get to draw 2 cards, and then I shuffle everything in. We know where all the agendas are. Well, all the agendas that could win them the game. 1 is here, and then 2 we just shuffled back into R&D. But withdrawing that, you know, we sort of gained access to all of them, and then we lost access immediately. They get in. Did it break? Might have broken. Yeah. Again, we haven't drawn the Kakurenbo or the Regenesis, which is what I keep trying to find. But at this point, you can see their money. They don't have a lot of money. They run this. 1 in 7 is a chance I'm willing to take. I'm not raising a Spin Doctor or anything. They run this. So they only have $1, so I don't res it. I don't even want to do the card draw at this point, really. I'd rather have that... Well, okay. Let me explain this. I say I don't want the card draw. It's like only half true. I'm in a weird spot where I haven't decided at this moment if I'm trying to do Kakurenbo or I'm trying to score the 5-3. Because in my mind, the Kakurenbo is the easier thing to do. Which might sound funny, but like all I need is the card Kakurenbo and a Regenesis. And I can just ice HQ and feel fine. Right? So initially I didn't raise Spin Doctor because I was like, I don't need to. And then I got to the next turn when it was my turn. That's the immediate next action. And I was thinking, I still want to find these cards. I still would rather do that. At this point, I'm acknowledging that there's a lot more risk all of a sudden. Now I know that 2 cards are in here, and I didn't get... Well, one's in here. One's in hand, right? And I'm sort of worried about where these things are going to end up. My idea at this point is that I am going to do the thing I was talking about, where you have 2 ice in front of an Anoetic Void. Now they do have a... It's worth knowing they do have... This is the symbol that I'm thinking of, but I don't know what I'm talking about. Pinhole threading. So they can like zoop, zoop, or zoop, zoop, but that still costs them like resources. Right now, obviously this is a little bit cheaper because they get to do Chesve on it. But they can't Chesve on this stuff, so it's a lot harder for them to get in. Like they can do like a Debbie plus a overclock if they're running it. Or like an, I don't know, something. But we can do that. Now I misclick or misthink here. I know I'm going for this place, so I know I want the 4 credits, but I'm thinking, well, I don't need a petty cash yet, but I should have petty cashed. And so I mentioned to Gloomplunk that I realized I should have petty cashed. Because with that 4th click allows me to install the 5-3. And now I know where all the 5-3s are. I install the 5-3, I advance, and then I install another piece of ice on top of it. Now, I'm thinking if I want to have the agendas in hand or in deck, but because we have 2 pieces of ice, I choose in deck, and they choose a transfer of wealth, which is... Well, do they? They undo that. I think they're thinking about how they win. They choose a transfer of wealth. They need the extra credit, sorry, to get through. But I don't have any in hand. I'm lucky enough to have none in hand. And try and go into this. I get to Spin Doctor, and that's obviously game, right? In fact, they choose a concession over me being able to advance. I always think ahead of this time, ahead of this, ahead of me, like literally speaking to you right now, that I'm gonna do really well in this VOD review. I'm gonna express my ideas clearly. I'm going to acknowledge the ideas. I'm gonna know what I'm doing because I'm myself, and so I remember what the plays were. I'm surprised at a lot of my early plays. The mulligan, I mean, we won, so obviously the mulligan was like inherently at least a little fine. The mulligan is interesting. I think it doesn't form. If I wanted to articulate my mulligan theory, I feel like keeping that mulligan would have to be a caveat rather than an obvious rule, which feels strange to say, but I think that's how I have to acknowledge that. In addition, the early turns were really awkward with respect to ice, but basically everything after the early turns was fairly normal with how the deck plays. If you're thinking things were weird then, they weren't really that weird. At most, we did more corporate hospitality stuff than we normally do, right? And we got a lot more, we got access to all 3 of our spin doctors, which you don't always get access to all 3 of your spin doctors. But other than that, that felt like a pretty normal game. If anything, the strangest bit was that they got the Regenesis early, which meant that we couldn't do Kakurenbo Combo as easily, because one of the Regenesises was out in a way that the Regenesises normally aren't out, right? Normally, there's 2 left in the deck that you're looking to draw instead of just 1. And they got an agenda from Archives in a very funny time. That might have been why they ran it so often, because they think that I'm a agenda in Archives person. I'm not typically an agenda in Archives person, but I did it then because my hand was flooded and I thought it was right. But I think this should show how the deck normally plays. Now, they're a Chesve deck, so they didn't run this. If we weren't getting infinite money from this, like, what turn was this? This must have been, I mean, we can check. We actually just have access to the game. This was turn 11. This activated me, that means I didn't do it on turn 1 or turn 2. This activated 9 times. That got me 18 credits and 9 card draw. That is so much for 1 card. 2 if you include the Boto, I suppose. This happens always. Like, I'm gonna be honest, most of the time I get my cohort and it just sticks. If my opponents that I go to like play against see this video, which they're fucking allowed to, and notice that I just keep my cohort around, they'll probably start actually attacking it more and realize that I'm more reliant on it. But I also have 3 cohorts in the deck, right? I would have gotten other ones as well. And with that cohort, you just click to draw, Hansei Review, or you click to draw, install, and it's like fine. Well, maybe I don't get to trash my Tattoo Bowlers anymore, and I get like my very meaningless $2 from Tattoo Bowler, or sometimes $1 if you're pitting it 1 up. But this felt like a pretty normal and good game. I was very satisfied with how it went, and this, I feel like, perfectly shows how Kakurenbo Combo feels to play. With the exception that, obviously, I think the best version of it is on Hollow Man, and I was just testing out the Pivot and the Corporate Hospo, which were good, right? The Corporate Hospo and Pivots are good side grades. I actually do quite like them. And I think 2 Corporate Hospo, 1 Pivot is, like, the better way to play this. But, rather than 2 Pivot and 1 Corporate Hospo, which I was also thinking about. But, yeah, I suppose that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.